Hi, I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.
Do you spank your children? Do you think you should spank your children? Recent research has shown about 70 to 80% of Black parents believe in corporal punishment. So we want to talk about corporal punishment today. Do you believe that that helps? And what are the alternatives to hitting your child? Let's talk about our experiences. We all grew up with corporal punishment. We had it done to us. We listened to it happen to our neighbors. It was just kind of understood at that time that you got a beating. You didn't get a spanking, you got a beating. So by the time I had my daughter, I decided that if you were to assault a child the way, or an adult the way you do a child, you would do jail time. And that maybe we should start thinking about corporal punishment. So, yeah, I've come close a couple of times, but Sarah wasn't spanked.
Well, I tell you, I have very, very strong views about that. And I find that other people have very strong views about that in the opposite direction. In my book, The Female Solution, the introduction starts out with a little child being spanked. I don't say this, the sex of the child, but just the fact that this child doesn't understand why they're being beaten. And, you know, at the time when I wrote it, it was, in fact, my own experience. And I believe that, and I was very young, that was one of those memorable beatings. You can call it spanking or whatever, but I think that damaged something in me for life, that it's taken years to heal the pain of that feeling of injustice, betrayal, all of those things, and planted the seed of anger. And it's taken a good portion of my adult life to overcome this repressed rage. And I've kind of pinpointed that moment as when it started. And so I decided, and my husband, he had a horrible beating experience as well. His stepfather beat him very badly. So both of us agreed we would not hit our child. And we never did. And, you know, Zakia will tell you that she was never, my daughter, she'll tell you she was never beaten. As a matter of fact, when she had a conversation with her friends at school, and they were all comparing notes of, oh, my mother beat me with a strap, or mine beat me with an iron cord, or mine hit me with a shoe. And they were like, well, what you get whooped with? She said, I don't get whoopings. And she said, well, what does your mother do? And she said, she'll make me write an essay. And they all laughed because, you know, I taught at the school, and that's what I make them do for punishment. She's like,
Right,
oh,
right.
make me write an essay at home? Yeah, I mean, this was, yep. But this was one of my alternatives, because I think that whatever your punishment should be, it should be something that helps you think about what you did and explain why it was incorrect. And then, of course, what you would do differently next time.
Now, of course, she was older when you were doing this. You weren't making her write essays at the age of 2.
Well, no, but see, at the age of 2, you also don't understand why you're being hit. You just know you're being
exactly
hit.
right.
But you're not old enough to understand and express it in words. You're not old enough to understand why you're being hit. So this is why, for me, being hit at an early age was very traumatizing, because I didn't understand it. Now, I understood it years later, why our mother responded that way. She was afraid for me, and this was her way to impress upon me the dangers of what she felt I had done. I went in someone's home. But at 4, you know, I'm like, why are you hitting me? I explained to you, I went into my friend's house, and the next thing I'm getting this beating, and you know, it was confusing to me. So I understand that there's an age where you really don't understand, and when you get to the age where you can understand, then you're at the age of reason. So why would you hit somebody when you can reason with them? For me, there's never a reason to hit, because if you're old enough to understand, then you're old enough for us to talk about it. And if you're not old enough to understand, then you're not going to understand why I'm hitting you. That's my reasoning.
I think there are two things that we have to think about here. I think that the move that parents have these days toward moving away from corporal punishment is a backlash of abuse. Now, if we were to be polled, we would say that the discipline that we got in that manner was actually abusive, but that was all that our parents knew. That's what they grew up with. And then I know for myself, I find that there has to be a different attitude about why you're spanking. And I don't think spanking and beating should be used interchangeably. To me, a spanking is 3 swats with a wooden spoon and on top of a diaper of a 2-year-old. That isn't going to traumatize anyone, because you are trying to train them. And let me talk about what I mean by this. I saw this book that was not available when my children were small, but it's called Shepherding a Child's Heart by some guy, Ted Tripp. So anyway, he goes into this explanation and about why you are spanking your child. The what you are really trying to get at, and he was not real big on corporal punishment either. He was more about talking to your child, explaining things to them, and really trying to capture their hearts toward learning how to respond to God in that way. And I find that a lot of people who believe in spanking your children, they have lost that whole reasoning for why you are training your child. You know, the Bible says, train your child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And for example, Eli in 1 Samuel, he was a high priest, but his adult sons were running amok. They were doing all kinds of immoral behavior, sleeping with all the women in the temple, and people told him, and this man would not restrain his sons. So and eventually the Lord took him out. Well, wait a minute. Let me tell you another story about a hero that we're looking after.
But the assumption is, Barbara, the assumption is, if I beat you, I'm going to make your behavior better.
No. It's not about behavior. No, it is totally, because the thing is, when you are trying to capture the heart of a child, it is about teaching. You're not trying to tell them, oh, I want you to do this to make you behave. I want you to reflect on how you are responding in the right manner. Like, for instance, when you are talking about David, you know, David, the giant killer who killed the giant, he was a horrible parent. This guy was a horrible parent.
Okay.
He had
hold on.
a bunch of kids by a bunch of different wives that he had, and one of his sons actually raped one of his daughters. David didn't do a thing about it. And so one of his other sons decided to take matters into his own hands, and he killed that brother. And, you know, the Bible is riddled with all these stories of all these kind of things that have happened. But I believe in applying that in our lifetime, you want to train your child to not just love and respect, but to love and respect and respond rightly to authority. And it's not about beating, it is about training. Like I said, if you go over the 3 slots,
you know what it is?
Okay, let
you have you lost your chance to use that kind of discipline, because you're operating out of anger, you're operating out of despair, you're operating out of a mode of
What happened when you
not
talk to a
having
person who hates
control.
their children? They
You've
don't
lost
they get
control when
upset
you
about-
started beating a child. You have
I'm
lost
telling you.
control.
Listen to yourself. The
Yes.
defensiveness. The reality is, Barbara, parents beat children out of their own ego. And it's nothing
Yes.
to do with touching the heart. It's my ego. You're going to obey me. I'm the authority of you. It's about your ego, because if it was really about training, you would develop better skills in training. What if
That's
your
exactly
teacher,
right.
if you didn't get a lesson, decided to hit you? And I know some teachers who have, oh, you didn't memorize your timetables? Well, let me give you a couple of swats so I can
Oh, I
train you.
agree.
And
I totally
just
agree.
learn better? No, it
Parents that do that are not,
never
whether it's ego or anger,
there is
true
never a
parent who is in a position of calmness,
there is
you
never a
know
reason
that
out
you
there.
are
Calm
training
beating is
your
still a
child.
beating. There's never a reason to hit a child. The only
Yeah.
reason why a parent hits a child is because they don't have the skills to teach them. They don't have the skills.
May I
That's why.
speak? May I
Period.
speak? May I speak? When you have a child, whether by birth or adoption, foster, whatever, that child is given to you and that child trusts you. You
Yeah,
are entrusted with
right.
that child.
That's
And if
right.
you, and wait, let me finish. And once you violate that trust by hitting or abusing them, that trust is broken.
No matter what you call
No
it,
matter
how
what
calmly you do it.
explanation, and I don't God care how many thousands of years you can go back that and say, well, this is what happened. That means that you're punishing, I'm going to punish Sarah for what David didn't do. So
No,
I'm not,
it's not about
so I'm
punishment.
not doing that.
It is about, see, we gotta,
Skill.
because of our
I'm not
own-
finished. I'm not finished. This is about you training your child. When they are 2 and 3 years old, they are going to be defiant because they are 2 and 3 years old, and that is their job. What you need to do is teach them that they have to learn how to calm themselves down. When Sarah was little, and she was rarely tantrumed. In fact, she was one of those kids who was, I never had a day during daycare where she would come back, where the teacher would say, oh, she had a tough day or anything like that. And some kids, they are very good all the time, and then they melt down when they come home. And they do that because they've had to be good all day. And she rarely did that. But sometimes there were times, at least once or twice, where she would be in full meltdown, and she would say to me, I'm trying to calm myself down. She had to teach herself, and I had to help teach her. Now, if I hit her, that escalates things.
Yeah.
It does not help anybody. It doesn't make me feel better. And I'm going to tell you, people, you start saying it's a SWAT, but you're still, if you SWAT somebody, if somebody were to come up to you, or your boss were to come up to you and SWAT you 3 times on the behind, you would have a case against them. And
That is because we're adults, not children.
Yeah, and why is it
Why
better?
are children less people than adults?
It's not
Why are
the
they less
same
deserving?
thing.
Yes, it is. Why are you less deserving of your dignity because you're a young person?
We're
Yeah,
not talking about robbing them
humiliated
of
because
their
you're a young
dignity.
No,
We
if
are
You hit someone,
talking
you are
about
robbing them of
You're
their
training
robbing
dignity.
them
child.
of their dignity.
See,
I
I
don't
think
care
you
how
have
old they
this
are.
whole vision
You are
of
from the
beating
time you are
and
a person.
spanking.
No
Well, it's
matter
because
how old
our
you are.
experience was not the best. And if you've
Yeah.
never
There
seen
is no
any
best
other
for
method,
beating.
There is no best for beating. There is no best
There is
for
no
assault.
best for beating. If
You
you
do
raise
not
your
hit other
skills and not your hands, you don't have to hit a child. You don't have to hit a child when you know how to correct their behavior without violence. We keep making excuses for not having knowledge. You have
Yes.
to realize we made
And we
error
are
in judgment because of lack of knowledge.
we are perpetrating
because they didn't
we are
know.
perpetrating slave mentality. When mothers had to beat their children because they were enslaved people, they were trying to make their children obey because they didn't want their master to beat them and to sell their child away, and they or maybe kill them. We are not enslaved anymore. We need to stop taking those lessons and treat our children like the precious beings that we have been gifted, and teach them. Yes, we're going to have meltdowns. Yes, we have the years of a middle school and high school where they're defiant even more because they're toddlers again. They just are taller and they have better language skills. So you're going through that toddlerhood all over again when they're adolescents. But if you have already established that might makes right, you're going to have a whole hard time trying to get them to hear you, trying to get them to respect you and to come to you when they do need help. And, beating someone, hitting someone, making them feel bad about themselves instead of saying, oh, you know what, this was really disappointing. Let's try to figure out how this doesn't happen again. That means a whole lot because your child will not fear getting assaulted by you. They will fear disappointing you. So they will make better choices because they don't want to disappoint their parents. They know, okay, well, maybe me sneaking out wasn't the best thing. But if you're, and the thing is that once you rob someone of their dignity, and I don't care if they're 1, 2 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old, 14 years old, you break that trust. You have broken a bond with them, and they're not going to feel the same way about you.
Right.
It is just like the first. It is like being in an abusive, uh, intimate relationship. Yes, or let me say a romantic relationship, because all our relationships are intimate in a sense. But if you're in an abusive relationship with your partner, and that partner assaults you, or even just verbally assaults you, even once you say, "Okay, I'm sorry, that'll never happen again," you don't feel the same way about that person. That's the same way with a child. And this child is coming to you, and you're supposed to be teaching them. You can teach a child how to respond to things. You don't teach children not to hit each other by hitting them.
Right.
You don't teach a child, to respect another child's toys or things, or grandma's delicate things, by smacking them. You teach them to say, you know what, this is very special to grandma. Please don't touch it, because if you break it, you're going to hurt her feelings. That's it. That's enough. And as they get older, you can reason with them. I think we need to get away from this whole thing of violence. We talk about this and we don't understand that hitting is violence. Now, unless you're hitting somebody on the back because they're choking and you're trying to get the thing out of their throat, you don't need to be hitting other people.
That's my view. And Barbara, to be and you're
I actually agree with everything you said, but I think you're starting at a different premise than I am, because number one, I'm not talking about smacking. Number two, I'm not talking about slapping, hitting, beating. I'm not talking about any of those things. And I know that because we all experience that ourselves, that is the premise that you are starting from. But I'm trying to give you a different premise in which it is about instruction, teaching, just like you said. Now, when you are trying to train a child a certain way, you are going to look at them, you are going to speak to them, but you have different ways of how you deal with them depending on what the infraction is. If it is something that is innocent, like knocking over milk, you're not going to get all angry and blow up at them about that. But if it is something that is going to harm them, you want to turn their direction in another way. And I am not talking about not using alternatives to say, oh, which reminds me of Sinbad, who said, oh yeah, sit me in this corner, think about what I did. Oh, I'm gonna go do that again. I mean, you have people that actually think that way. But when you are dealing with a child, like for instance, you don't give them a spanking or a beating or smack or hit them or slap for having a meltdown. And it is a good, I totally agree with teaching them how to find ways to calm themselves. But I also think that there is a time for, and what I want to reiterate was the 3 swats on the bottom with a wooden spoon when there is direct rebellion about something that is going to harm them. That is totally different than a parent who has gone off into abuse. Once you have gone over that little 3 SWAT rule, you have lost that authority. You have lost the right to use corporal punishment of any kind. A parent who loses their temper, a parent who has lost control, a parent who doesn't have any other recourse. I mean, we got beat for everything. I mean, everything.
But
And
even
I
if
am trying to move away from that kind of thinking.
Well,
But
our
this
time
is the
is up,
thing.
ladies.
This is the thing. There is no, it doesn't matter if we have come to this because we are coming from a different premise. The result is still the same.
No,
You
it
are
is
hitting,
not.
yes,
It's
it
not
is.
the same.
You are still hitting someone who is
But it's not
smaller than
hitting.
you,
It is
weaker than
totally
you.
not hitting.
Well, you know what? We're gonna have to probably do a part 2 on this, and I would love to have our children join us.
Yes, I
Their
would
points
too.
of view. And I'm gonna tell you, Barbara, you know your son John is a fantastic person, and he's turned out well, and he had his share of spanking. And one day I asked him, I said, John, do you think that the spankings you got helped you become a better person and helped you obey more? And he said, no. This is what he said.
Yes.
So
And I would be interested because your Barbara's the only grandmother here. So
and your children don't use spanking. I've noticed that. Lorelai
Yeah.
is very patient with Royal. I mean, I'm
She
amazed
is.
at her patience. She does not raise her voice at him. And he cries, he has his meltdown, and she is just so calm, so patient, so loving. I've never seen her scream. I've never seen her hit. So apparently they decided not to use that method. And I would be curious as to know why they chose the parenting methods that they chose.
Yeah, I'm willing to learn and listen as well. Because like I said, I agree with everything that you said, but also I do believe that a couple of pows has not harmed anyone. And I'm wondering also if when you asked John that, if he was even referring to them getting spankings in school. I totally don't
No,
agree
he
with
did. He
that.
talking about home. We were clear. We were
Okay. Stop that laughing.
Did your mother hitting you make you behave? No, it didn't.
Because and this is the thing, and we will have to go into that because when I lived in California, they had instituted and I lived in the high desert for 5 years, and so I got to know a lot of the schools because I was I reported high school sports. But they were talking about in the middle school where they had allowed parents to say to their assistant principal, yes, you can hit my child. Now these are middle schoolers. Now think about the age of middle schoolers. And
I don't think you should even be doing that past the age of 6, quite frankly.
I don't think you should ever do it.
Well, my last thing is if you're too young to understand reasoning,
That is why you talk to them.
Because if you're not understanding when I speak to you, you're not going to understand if I hit you.
Yes.
That's it. Well, we got to go, ladies. We got to go because time is
Because before we get mad.
See, and I'm not mad.
Well,
I'm not mad
okay,
either.
so Barbara, if you burn the dinner tonight and Eric comes with a wooden spoon.
Oh no, we've had dinner already. No, we're not talking about wife beating. We're talking about children being abused.
And that's the thing, is that they're children. They're children and they have no recourse.
I burnt that dinner.
Yes, exactly.
And would it help you remember to watch the pot next time if you got a little spanking?
There are spankings, and then there are spankings.
All right, well, we'll find out. Well, we got to go. So we will see you all next time. I'm Naima.
I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl, and we're 3 Black moms. Bye.
Bye.